It started on a quiet Tuesday night. The world was as normal as ever. People were scrolling through their phones, watching shows, arguing about politics, and planning their next weekend trip. No one knew that, far beyond the stars, something was already watching them. In a small observatory in the mountains of Chile, a group of scientists were running their routine sky scans. They had done it 1,000 times before, watching the radio waves from space, recording signals that were mostly noise from stars and galaxies. But that night, one of them noticed something strange. The signal wasn't random. It repeated, and it was too clean, too sharp to be natural. At first, they thought it was interference from a satellite. They ran checks. Nothing matched. Then the pattern came again in perfect rhythm. There was a sequence of tones and pauses, each pulse lasting the exact same time as the last. Someone or something was sending a message. The scientists worked through the night trying to decode it. By morning, they realized it wasn't just a message. It was a command, a digital structure similar to military code. It wasn't human. It wasn't from Earth. They contacted the United Nations Space Monitoring Division. Within hours, the recording had reached every major intelligence agency in the world. By the time the sun rose, a quiet panic had spread through the highest offices on the planet. The message, once decoded, was short but chilling. It wasn't a greeting. It was an order. The translation read, "Territory classified for acquisition. Prepare for integration." Those words were enough to freeze every heart in the room. No one said the word invasion out loud, but everyone was thinking it. Leaders held emergency meetings. Scientists argued in crowded conference rooms, their faces pale from sleepless nights. Some said it was fake, maybe an elaborate prank or a data error, but deep down everyone knew it was real. The signal's source had been tracked. It came from deep space, far beyond the edge of the solar system. And it was moving closer. For the next few weeks, the world tried to stay calm. Governments didn't release the full information to the public. Instead, they announced a technical anomaly in deep space communication. But rumors began to spread anyway. On social media, people posted screenshots, leaked documents, even sound clips of the strange signal. Conspiracy theories exploded. Some said aliens were coming to save humanity. Others believed it was a new kind of weapon test. In the middle of all the chaos, one thing became clear. Something was approaching Earth and no one could stop it. In secret, the United Nations launched Project Aegis. It wasn't about building weapons. Humanity had plenty of those already. It was about information. Every nation agreed to share data like never before. Satellites were reprogrammed to track the unknown objects that had entered the outer system. Within weeks, astronomers confirmed it. A fleet of metallic structures was moving at unbelievable speed toward Earth. Still, the world kept turning. People went to work. Children went to school. But something had changed. A quiet tension filled the air. The news channels spoke carefully, avoiding panic but never fully denying what was coming. Across the world, you could feel that something was about to happen. In a small control room somewhere in Geneva, a group of scientists watched the data streams in silence. The screens showed the objects entering the asteroid belt and changing formation. They weren't random debris. They were moving with purpose. Each one seemed the size of a city. "They're organizing," one of them whispered. Someone else replied softly, "They're here to take us." No one laughed. No one argued. The first official sighting came from the International Lunar Telescope. 3 massive shapes had appeared near the moon's orbit. They were silver-gray, almost mirror-like, and they moved in a perfect triangle formation. Their movement didn't match any known physics of human-made crafts. They didn't burn fuel. They didn't emit heat. They simply glided, smooth, effortless, terrifying. For a few hours, every major space agency went silent. Then in one global broadcast, the message appeared again. This time, it came directly through every satellite, television, and digital screen on the planet. A metallic voice spoke in perfect translation. "This world is now under the dominion of the Galactic Empire. Surrender and prepare for integration." The message played 3 times and then vanished. The world froze. Some screamed. Some prayed. But surprisingly, most people just stared, not in fear but in disbelief. For centuries, humanity had imagined aliens arriving with peace or war. Now that it had actually happened, the reality felt strangely quiet. In cities across the world, the light still shone. Planes still flew. Power plants still ran. The human race didn't stop. It just held its breath. Governments went on high alert. World leaders met behind closed doors, speaking in hushed tones about defense strategies, nuclear options, and emergency evacuations. But one thing stood out. Despite all the fear, there was no chaos. The internet buzzed with jokes and memes. People posted pictures of the night sky captioned, "Good luck, aliens, and we already survived 2020. It was strange, maybe even foolish, but it showed something unique about humanity. They laughed. They adapted. They refused to panic. The Galactic Empire, watching from orbit, could not understand that reaction. While the world looked calm on the surface underground, things were different. In hidden research labs and military bunkers, scientists and engineers worked day and night. They didn't try to build spaceships. They knew they couldn't match the Empire's technology. Instead, they focused on understanding the signal, the language, the rhythm, the structure of alien communication. A quiet idea began to spread among the researchers. If we can hear them, maybe we can talk back. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A young technician analyzing the signal noticed something buried inside it, a pattern that didn't belong. It wasn't just a message. It was a protocol, a way to control ships remotely. The Empire's fleet used synchronized digital commands, sent through a complex communication web. That discovery changed everything. If humanity could decode the system, they might not have to fight with guns. They could fight with code. Project Aegis shifted its focus overnight. Computers across the globe linked into one giant network, a secret digital wall built to listen, translate, and, if possible, respond. Still, fear lingered in the air. The alien ships were visible now, faint silver dots drifting across the sky like slow-moving stars. People looked up every night wondering when the attack would come. But nothing happened. Days passed. Then weeks. The ships simply hovered, silent and still. It was almost as if they were waiting. In a hidden meeting room beneath the European Space Council, the head of Project Aegis stood before a group of exhausted officials. She spoke calmly, her eyes focused on the holographic map of the fleet above Earth. "They are studying us," she said. "They think we're afraid." "That's their mistake." No one in the room spoke. The woman looked at them one by one and said quietly, "They don't know what humans do when we're cornered." Around the world, a strange calm took hold. People went back to work as if daring the sky to move. Children played in the parks again. The news channel stopped screaming invasion and started talking about unity, resilience, and preparation. It was as if humanity had made a silent agreement. If this was the end, they would face it together. Meanwhile, the signals between the alien fleet and Earth grew stronger. The human decoding teams were now receiving fragments of their internal chatter. It wasn't friendly. The aliens spoke of compliance and extraction and resource conversion. But in those same words, the humans saw weakness, structure, logic, predictability. And that was something humanity could use. They began to design countercodes, tests, and mimic signals to trick the alien systems into responding. Each small success gave them more courage. The sky changed one morning. It wasn't bright blue anymore. It looked metallic, like a thin silver fog had spread across the upper air. People could see something, faint lines and reflections, moving slowly above the clouds. At first, everyone thought it was a trick of light or a new type of satellite. But soon the truth became clear. Those lines were enormous ships, drifting silently across the sky. They didn't roar like airplanes or leave trails of smoke. They moved in total silence, almost peaceful, but terrifying at the same time. Across the world, people stopped whatever they were doing. Traffic lights turned green and red without anyone moving. Students left classrooms to look up at the strange silver shapes. Even in the busiest cities, silence spread like a wave. No one said anything for a few seconds. Then phones came out. Millions of videos hit the internet within minutes. Clips of glowing ships passing over oceans, deserts, and cities. The Galactic Empire had arrived. In every capital, leaders gathered in secure rooms surrounded by glowing screens. Military radars tracked hundreds of objects in the sky. Some were huge, some small, but all were connected, moving with perfect coordination. It wasn't an attack, at least not yet. The ships just hovered, silent and still, covering every continent like watchful eyes. Then came the broadcast. Every television, computer, and phone screen flickered. For a moment, all signals went dead. The screens turned black, and then a symbol appeared, a circle surrounded by 12 stars. A calm, metallic voice spoke in every language at once. This planet is now under the protection and rule of the Galactic Empire. Compliance ensures survival. Resistance ensures extinction, the message repeated twice. Then everything went back to normal, as if nothing had happened. People stared at their screens in disbelief. Some cried. Some laughed nervously. Some refused to believe it was real. But deep down, everyone knew it wasn't a hoax. The ships in the sky were proof enough. For the first few hours, the world stood still. Then something strange happened. Humanity didn't panic the way the Empire expected. Yes, there was fear, of course. Families gathered, people stocked up on food and water. Some prayed. But there was no global collapse. Planes still flew. Hospitals stayed open. People kept working. It was as if the world had collectively decided, if this is how it ends, we'll face it on our feet. That quiet courage confused the invaders. They had seen worlds collapse before. Planets that begged for mercy, species that surrendered instantly. But humans? They didn't kneel. They stared back. In an underground facility somewhere in the mountains, a small group of scientists and engineers worked without rest. Their screens were filled with streams of alien symbols, the data signals coming from the Empire's fleet. They had found a weak point. Every ship in orbit relied on constant communication with the central command hub. That signal was encrypted, but not impossible to read. Humans had learned to break codes long before they learned to fly. "Don't fight them with guns," said one of the lead analysts. "Fight them with brains." And that's what they did. The best mathematicians, hackers, and linguists were brought together under a single mission. Project Aegis. No flags. No borders. Just one purpose: understand the invaders and turn their own power against them. The Empire didn't know it. But humans had already started their counterattack. Not in space, but inside the invisible world of data and signals. Meanwhile, in the cities, life carried on in strange new ways. People learned to live under the silver sky. Children pointed at the ships and gave them nicknames. Artists painted them. Musicians wrote songs about the watchers in the clouds. For a while, nothing happened. The Empire didn't destroy anything. They just observed. It was almost like they were testing humanity, waiting to see how they would respond. Governments, of course, stayed alert. Military jets flew patrols, though everyone knew they couldn't do much if the aliens attacked. Satellites tried to scan the ships, but the data came back scrambled. Whatever the ships were made of, it bent light, heat, and radar. The Empire had technology beyond human imagination, but what they didn't have was human unpredictability. One afternoon, something unusual happened. The largest ship, the one above the Pacific Ocean, released a smaller craft. It descended slowly, glowing white, until it reached the upper atmosphere. Cameras across the world captured it live. The smaller ship broadcasted a new message. This time the voice was softer, almost human-like. "You will send a representative. Your leader will speak with us. Resistance is not logical." Every nation argued over who should go. The United Nations finally decided to send one negotiator, a calm, confident person known for speaking truth under pressure. No one knew exactly what would happen, but the world watched as a single aircraft lifted off toward the alien vessel. For the first time, humans saw what was inside an alien ship. The negotiator described it later, how everything was bright, endless, almost alive. There were no walls, only light that shifted like breathing air. The beings themselves didn't look like the monsters people imagined. They were tall, translucent, and calm, their movements smooth like flowing water. They spoke through thought, their words forming directly in the human's mind. They offered peace, but only if humanity agreed to obey. When the negotiator asked what obedience meant, the answer was simple and cold. "You will be part of the Empire. You will serve. Your planet's energy and labor will be integrated into our system." The negotiator smiled, and a small, quiet smile. That single gesture, that tiny smirk, would later become one of the most famous moments in human history. Without saying a word, the negotiator turned off the communication device. The live feed ended. The whole world saw that smirk, frozen on the screen for half a second before everything went black. For a long moment, the Earth was silent. No one knew if that person was alive or dead. The alien ships made no movement. Then, something unexpected happened. The global communication network flickered and a signal appeared, not from the aliens, but from Earth itself. A message repeated across satellites in a pattern identical to the Empire's own transmission system. The humans had done it. They had broken the code. Project Aegis had used the Empire's communication system to send a signal back into their network, not an attack, but a test. They wanted to see if they could interfere, and it worked. Some of the smaller ships above the atmosphere blinked erratically, losing formation for a few seconds. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make the invaders pause. Down on Earth, people didn't yet know what was happening behind the scenes. All they saw were strange lights moving across the sky, forming new patterns, some even disappearing for minutes before reappearing again. The internet exploded with theories. Some said the aliens were leaving. Some said the humans had launched a secret weapon. Some said the ships were fighting among themselves. In truth, humanity had only taken its first step in digital warfare against an empire that ruled thousands of worlds. And the empire didn't realize yet that the humans were no longer the frightened species they expected. That night, something even stranger happened. Every radio on Earth, even old ones that hadn't worked in years, suddenly buzzed with static. And through that static, a faint voice whispered, the same metallic voice that once demanded surrender, but this time it wasn't confident. It sounded uncertain. This is not according to projection. Human behavior, unpredictable. And then the transmission cut out. For the first time in its history, the Galactic Empire was confused. In homes around the world, people stayed up all night watching the sky. Some said they saw flashes like distant storms as the alien ships shifted positions. But despite the tension, the world didn't collapse. People still made breakfast. Kids still went to school. Someone somewhere fell in love. That was the strange thing about humanity. No matter how close the end seemed, life went on. The Empire couldn't understand that. To them, logic ruled all. But humans? They had something different. Hope mixed with stubbornness, humor in the face of fear, and a kind of courage that didn't make sense on paper. The negotiator's smirk had captured all of that in one single expression. The next morning, scientists in Project Aegis received the data they'd been waiting for, a full map of the alien network's communication routes. They finally had a way in, but using it would mean provoking the Empire. And yet every person in that underground room knew what had to be done. The aliens had come with their empire, their fleets, their arrogance, but the humans had something far more dangerous: unity, creativity, and a quiet determination that couldn't be measured in any empire's logic. So when the question came, do we engage? There was no debate. Someone simply said, let's remind them who they're dealing with. That was the night before everything changed. The night before the sky truly lit up. The night before the world stopped being afraid and started fighting back. The morning after the smirk, the world felt different. People woke up early expecting explosions or announcements from the Empire, but the sky was quiet. The silver ships were still there, hanging like frozen clouds. The news channels played the same loop. The moment the negotiator looked up, smiled slightly, and cut the signal. That tiny smirk had gone viral. All over the world. People shared it online with captions like, "We don't bow," and the Earth just smiled back. It became more than just an image. It became a message. Humanity wasn't powerless. Humanity was unpredictable. And deep inside secret rooms around the planet, that same confidence spread. Among the scientists of Project Aegis, the decoding teams had done something incredible. They had entered the Empire's communication net for a few seconds without being detected. They knew now that the invaders weren't gods. They could be hacked. While the rest of the world carried on, pretending life was normal, Aegis headquarters was running like a beating heart underground. Screens glowed in the dark, filled with alien code that looked like dancing light. The room was silent except for the low hum of machines and the soft clicking of keyboards. A scientist looked up and said quietly, "They think we're weak," another replied. "Let's not correct them yet." They were building something new. Not a weapon that destroyed, but a weapon that could take control. A digital storm designed to slip into the Empire's systems like a whisper. They called it the Mirror Protocol. If it worked, Earth could reflect the Empire's own commands back at them, like holding up a mirror to their power. Outside, the rest of the world waited. Days passed. The alien ships didn't move, didn't attack. It was like they were frozen in time. But everyone could feel something coming. The air itself seemed heavy, like the calm before a storm. In cities, life had a strange rhythm. Some people went to work. Others stayed home and watched the sky all day. Street artists painted murals of the Smirked. Schools taught children about courage, unity, and the power of staying calm. It was as if the entire world had turned into one big waiting room. Then, on a Friday evening, everything changed. The largest ship above the Pacific began to move again. Its silver surface shimmered with blue light, and beams of energy spread across the clouds like lightning veins. People on the coastlines pointed and gasped. The ocean waves began to twist, rising higher than usual. The ship was doing something, scanning the planet, measuring, preparing. Every satellite locked onto it. Every radar screen flashed red. Inside Project Aegis, alarms went off. "They're activating," said one of the analysts. This could be the start. But instead of fear, the scientists exchanged quick glances. They had been waiting for this. The moment the Empire activated their global control frequency, the Mirror Protocol went live. The first seconds were chaos. The alien signal surged through the atmosphere like a digital storm, invisible but powerful. Every network, every communication line, every electrical pulse in the world felt it. But the humans were ready. The Mirror Protocol intercepted the stream, reading it, mimicking it, and sending it right back, slightly altered just enough to confuse the alien receivers. On the surface, nothing seemed to happen. But up in orbit, things began to break. The smaller alien ships started to lose coordination. Their perfect triangle formations wobbled. Some began drifting, bumping into one another. A few even powered down completely, their silver glow fading as they fell slowly toward the atmosphere. The Empire had no idea what was happening. They had fought hundreds of worlds, conquered civilizations with ease. But never before had a planet fought back without firing a single shot. On Earth, people watched as glowing trails appeared in the sky, alien crafts falling like silent comets into the oceans. For a moment, humanity forgot to be afraid. They cheered. They clapped. They cried. News anchors couldn't explain it. Governments had no statements. But everyone knew. Somehow the humans had done something. The smirk wasn't just defiance anymore. It was victory, but victory came with danger. The Mirror Protocol was powerful, but it wasn't stable. The alien systems were too advanced, too unpredictable. For every ship that fell, the others adapted. Their networks began to rewire themselves, searching for the source of the interference. Inside Aegis Command, warning lights turned red. "They're tracing us," someone said. "They're trying to break through the loop." The room filled with tension. Every second counted. Then came the moment everyone feared. The largest ship in orbit, the command vessel, changed color. Its silver body pulsed with bright red energy. That meant one thing: retaliation. Across the world, every piece of electronic equipment began to hum. Streetlights flickered. Phones went dead. Planes lost navigation. Power grids overloaded. The Empire had released a counterpulse, a digital wave, designed to shut down anything connected to Earth's technology. But the humans had one more trick left, deep. Inside the Mirror Protocol was a backup, something built not by engineers, but by ordinary programmers who understood how chaos worked. They called it Ghostline. Unlike the Empire's system, which relied on perfect order, Ghostline thrived on unpredictability. It turned random signals, music, radio chatter, even people's voice recordings into shields of confusion. The aliens' counterattack hit Earth, but instead of destroying the systems, it got tangled in millions of random frequencies. Songs, laughter, voices, and static filled the alien channels. It was messy. It was human. And it worked. Up above, the Empire's fleet was in disarray. Their ships began to malfunction again, turning their own weapons offline. The coordination link between them broke completely. The command vessel tried to send orders, but its signal kept bouncing back, reflected, twisted, jammed by Earth's chaotic response. For the first time, the Galactic Empire realized what they were facing wasn't a primitive race. It was something far more dangerous, a planet full of unpredictable, emotional, stubborn beings who refused to follow any rule of logic. As the night went on, strange lights filled the sky. People everywhere stood outside their homes staring at the glowing patterns above. Some thought it was the end of the world. Others thought it was the beginning of something new. No missiles were launched. No buildings were destroyed. Yet the sky was alive with war. An invisible one fought through signals, codes, and human willpower. And somewhere deep underground, the team behind Aegis watched the data streaming across the monitors. They could see it happening. The Empire's fleet falling apart. Still, no one celebrated. They all knew this was just the first round. The Empire was enormous. This was only one fleet. The real test was yet to come. In the morning, sunlight returned to the sky. The silver clouds began to thin. Reports poured in. Several alien crafts had crashed into remote parts of the ocean and deserts. Military teams were sent to investigate. The debris didn't look like anything from this world. Smooth, glassy metal that changed shape when touched. But even with the wreckage, humanity didn't rush to study it. The focus was on something bigger: unity. Across the globe, countries that had once argued for years now worked together. Engineers from rival nations shared code and designs. Soldiers stood side by side. Scientists shared their findings without secrecy. The threat from the stars had done something no peace treaty ever could. It made humans act as one. Meanwhile, the remaining alien ships stayed silent. They didn't attack again. They simply floated above the clouds, motionless and dim. Some believed they were regrouping. Others thought they were waiting for new orders from their empire. But deep inside Project Aegis, the team noticed something odd. The Empire's central communication signal, the one that connected the fleet to its command center across the galaxy, had gone quiet. The Empire had stopped calling. That night, when people looked at the stars, they saw them clearly for the first time in months. The ships were still there, faint and dull like shadows. But there was peace in the air, not complete safety, but a calm born from courage. Humanity had faced the impossible and survived the first wave. The negotiator's smirk, that quiet, confident gesture, was now painted on walls, printed on shirts, and burned into history. It wasn't just a smile anymore. It was a message. We're still here, but far beyond the stars, in a place no human had ever seen. The real Empire had received the news. Their fleet had failed. Their systems had been turned against them. And the report from the command ship contained a final line that puzzled even the highest rulers of the Empire. The humans smiled. The great halls of the Empire's capital fell silent. No one there understood what that meant. But soon they would, because the humans had just declared, without saying a word, that the fight wasn't over. It was only beginning. The world didn't sleep that night. After the strange lights faded from the sky, people came out of their homes and just stood under the stars. The air was quiet, calm, almost sacred. It didn't feel like victory, not yet. It felt like the moment between heartbeats when everything could still change. The alien ships were still up there, but they no longer shone bright. Their silver glow had dimmed to a dull gray. They hung in silence like broken lanterns. News networks replayed the same clips again and again. The smirk, the falling ships, the flashes in the sky. But what none of them could capture was the feeling spreading through the world. For the first time in human history, everyone on Earth felt the same heartbeat. Not fear. Not hate. Just unity. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen. The ocean currents shifted slightly near the places where alien debris had fallen. The magnetic field flickered in small bursts as if the planet itself was trying to heal from what had happened. Scientists studied the wreckage carefully. The materials were like nothing anyone had seen before, smooth, light, but harder than diamond. And when light hit it, tiny symbols glowed on its surface, fading as quickly as they appeared. Every government wanted answers, but no one claimed ownership. For once, nations shared information instead of hiding it. There were no borders when it came to survival. Project Aegis became a global command, not hidden anymore, but recognized as the shield of the planet. The people behind it were still working day and night underground, studying the alien systems, trying to understand how much of the fleet was still active. They soon discovered something important. The alien ships weren't entirely dead. Some were rebooting slowly, repairing themselves. The Empire wasn't finished. Not yet. One evening, while the world watched the sunset behind the damaged ships, a low hum rolled through the sky. It was soft at first, like distant thunder, then stronger. Windows vibrated. Animals grew restless. Radios filled with static again. The Empire was trying to reconnect. But something strange happened. The alien network didn't come from space this time. It came from below. Somewhere inside the planet, deep under the crust, a signal was pulsing. It wasn't from Earth, and it wasn't from the remaining ships. It was something older. The scientists were shocked. Had the Empire placed something here before? Was this planet already known to them long ago? No one had time to answer. The signal grew stronger every hour. While experts and world leaders scrambled to find the source, ordinary people continued with their lives. It was a strange time, both peaceful and tense. Children went to school again, though teachers often stopped lessons to look out the windows at the silent gray ships. Farmers still planted seeds. Mechanics still fixed cars. People still laughed, cried, fell in love, and lived. But under all of that, everyone knew that something was coming. The smirk that had once symbolized bravery was now painted on walls, carved into monuments and printed on banners. It became a sign of unity. Whenever someone lost hope, they only needed to look at that smile and remember, the humans fought the Empire, and the humans still stood. In the underground base of Project Aegis, the team had found the location of the new signal, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. It was buried inside the Earth's mantle, impossible to reach with normal machines. At first, they thought it might be a weapon or a beacon calling for reinforcements. But when they decoded the first few fragments, they realized it wasn't a message for help. It was a command for silence. The Empire was trying to shut down all remaining communication, to erase every trace of their loss. That gave the humans an idea. If the Empire wanted silence, maybe that was the thing they feared most. The team began working on something new, the Archipelago Protocol. Unlike the mirror, which copied signals, Archipelago was meant to separate them completely. It would scatter every alien frequency across billions of microsignals, hiding Earth's digital presence from the Empire's reach. It would make humanity invisible, untouchable. The problem was, it required enormous energy. More than any one nation could supply. So for the first time in history, the entire world worked together. Power plants synchronized. Satellites realigned. Every city dimmed its lights for one night to save energy for the activation. People called it the Quiet Night. And on that night, for exactly 5 minutes, the world went dark. Under the black sky, only stars and the faint shadows of alien ships were visible. Then, a soft pulse rippled across the Earth. Invisible, gentle, but powerful. It spread through every signal, every machine, every satellite. The Archipelago Protocol had started. Within seconds, every human network went silent, but not off. It was hidden, masked beneath random noise that looked like static. The Empire's remaining ships tried to scan Earth again, but their sensors found nothing. It was as if the planet had disappeared. To them, humanity had gone dark. In homes across the world, people stepped outside and looked up at the stars. Without streetlights, the sky looked like an ocean of light. For the first time in decades, the Milky Way glowed bright enough to see with the naked eye. It was peaceful, beautiful, and strangely emotional. People whispered prayers, not of fear, but of thanks. Others sang softly. Some cried quietly, feeling that rare mix of hope and sadness that comes only after surviving something impossible. When the lights returned, the Earth wasn't the same anymore. For days, the alien ships remained motionless. Then slowly, one by one, they began to turn. Not toward Earth, but away from it. No one knew why. Some believed the aliens finally realized they couldn't control what they didn't understand. Others thought the Empire had recalled them, embarrassed by their defeat. Whatever the reason, humanity watched as the great ships drifted higher and higher, until they were only specks of silver against the dark sky. And then they were gone. No explosions. No final words. Just silence. The world waited for days, expecting them to return, but they never did. When it was clear the danger had passed, a quiet celebration began. There were no fireworks, no loud speeches. People just gathered together, in parks, in streets, on rooftops, and smiled at one another. It wasn't joy that filled the air. It was relief. Humanity had faced an empire that ruled across the stars, and had survived with nothing but courage, cleverness, and unity. The smirk became a legend. Children learned about it in school. Artists sculpted it in stone. Historians wrote about how, when faced with the most powerful empire in the galaxy, humanity's greatest weapon had been its spirit. But deep inside Project Aegis, the team wasn't celebrating. The signal under the Pacific hadn't disappeared. It had changed. It was no longer sending commands to the alien fleet, and it was sending data to somewhere else. When they traced it, the line pointed far beyond the solar system into deep space. The message was short, only 4 words long. Human species, they're not compliant. The room went silent. They all understood what it meant. The Empire knew now. They had lost the first round, but they wouldn't forget. Outside, life slowly returned to normal. The markets reopened. Children played soccer again. People rebuilt what little had been damaged, yet something invisible had changed forever. Humanity had tasted the truth. They weren't alone, and they weren't helpless. From the smallest village to the tallest city tower, people spoke with a new kind of confidence. They had looked into the face of something vast and cold, and instead of breaking, they had smiled. No alien ship, no empire, could erase that memory. Years later, when historians looked back on those days, they didn't call it the first invasion. They called it the Smirk era, the moment humanity stopped being afraid of the universe. Museums displayed fragments of alien alloy, and recordings of that final smirk played on endless loops. Students would stand in front of the screen and watch it over and over again. That tiny, confident smile that had changed everything. And every time they asked how the humans had done it, the answer was always the same. We didn't have better technology. We just had something they never understood. Someone would always ask, "What was that?" And the guide would smile back and say, "Heart far away in the deepest corners of the galaxy, the message that Earth had sent out, the smirk, the laughter, the quiet defiance, I had already reached other worlds under the Empire's rule. And on those distant planets, people whispered in their own languages. The humans smiled. That single phrase became a spark, and sometimes, all it takes to change an empire is a smile." The world had returned to peace, but it was not the same peace as before. Everything felt different now, the air, the silence, even the stars. People had begun to live again, but somewhere deep inside everyone carried a new kind of awareness. It wasn't fear anymore. It was curiosity. They had seen the stars move. They had seen ships that weren't built by human hands, and they had seen them leave. The story of how Earth had survived spread like fire across every country. People told it in different ways. Some called it the Day of Unity, others the Day of the Smirk. But no matter what name it had, the meaning was the same. Humanity had faced the impossible and refused to kneel. In every home, in every heart, a single question grew quietly. What happens next? Months passed. The alien ships were gone, but not forgotten. Pieces of their wreckage floated in orbit like silent witnesses of what had happened. Scientists all around the world studied those fragments. They discovered patterns inside the metal, like living circuits. It wasn't just a machine, and it was a kind of organism, half alive, half built. The more they studied it, the more they realized that the Empire's technology wasn't magic or divine. It was science, built from centuries of knowledge, and that meant it could be understood, it could be learned. The humans had started from nothing and reached the stars of their own planet. Now they had something new, a glimpse into the technology of a civilization that ruled galaxies. But not everyone wanted to use it for power. Some wanted to understand how the Empire thought, how they saw the universe. Others wanted to make sure it never happened again. There were long meetings, secret discussions, and silent agreements among world leaders. They had all seen what division had almost cost them. This time they swore to stay united. So they built something together. Far in the deserts where the horizon met the sky, a massive dome began to rise. It was called the Horizon Facility, a place where all nations could study the remains of the alien fleet, Not to build weapons, but to learn. Hundreds of scientists, engineers, and thinkers gathered there. They worked under one flag, not a nation's flag, but Earth's. Inside that dome, they rebuilt pieces of the alien systems one by one. Slowly, the technology began to make sense. They learned how to create energy fields that could bend light, engines that didn't burn fuel but used magnetic pressure, and data systems that worked faster than thought. Yet even with all that, no one forgot one simple truth. Humanity had survived not because of power, but because of unity. That idea guided everything they did. Meanwhile, in homes and towns, life moved forward. Farmers returned to their fields. Teachers told stories to children about the day the sky turned silver. Artists painted the smirk on walls, on cups, on clothes. People began to dream again, but their dreams had changed. No longer about wealth or fame, but about space. Children started saying things like, "And when I grow up, I want to go to the stars." For the first time in history, humanity wasn't looking up with fear, but with hope. But hope often brings responsibility. While the Horizon facility made progress, something unexpected happened. One of the alien fragments, a small glowing piece of metal, began to pulse with light again. At first, the scientists thought it was a reflection, maybe a chemical reaction, but then it started sending signals. The signals weren't random. They formed patterns, coordinates to be exact. The location pointed to deep space far beyond the solar system. It was the same direction the alien fleet had vanished toward. The room fell silent when they realized it. The Empire hadn't forgotten. They were out there. And now they knew Earth was alive and learning, but this time fear didn't spread. The humans didn't panic. Instead, they began to prepare. Project Aegis returned stronger and wiser than before. Its mission changed, no longer just to protect but to explore. They designed new ships based on what they had learned from the wreckage, but built with human creativity. These ships weren't huge or perfect. They were small, clever, and beautiful, just like the people who made them. Each carried the symbol of the smirk on its hull, a quiet reminder of where they had started. And the first ship that took flight was named Serenity. It wasn't built for war. It was built to sea. When Serenity lifted off, the world watched together again. There was no fear this time, only pride. Children waved flags, old people whispered prayers, and families held hands as the silver ship disappeared into the sky. Its destination, the same coordinates sent by the alien fragment. No one knew what they would find there. A warning, a message, or perhaps an invitation. But whatever it was, humanity was ready. Back on Earth, strange things began to happen in the sky again. Not alien ships, but bright streaks of light, shooting stars, thousands of them. Some said it was coincidence. Others believed the universe was watching, waiting to see what humans would do next. News channels called it the Night of 1,000 Stars. People stayed awake, sitting on rooftops and hills, talking about what life might be like on other worlds. It was peaceful. For once, the stars didn't feel distant. They felt like neighbors. Weeks passed, and then came the message. Serenity had reached the edge of the solar system. Its crew had found something, a vast empty structure floating in darkness. It looked like a city made of glass, silent and abandoned. Inside they found carvings, not in human language, but symbols similar to the ones on the alien ships. After days of decoding, the meaning became clear. The carvings told a story, not of war but of loss. It said that the Empire had once been many worlds, united by fear of chaos. They had believed that peace could only come through control, but that control had destroyed their spirit. And when they saw humans, chaotic, stubborn, emotional, they saw a reflection of what they had lost. Maybe that was why they had attacked. Not to destroy, but to test. The carvings ended with a phrase written in symbols that glowed faintly when touched. We feared what we did not understand. The message was heartbreaking and hopeful at the same time. When Serenity's crew sent the message back to Earth, people listened in silence. For a moment, the whole planet seemed to pause again, like it had when the smirk first appeared. The realization spread slowly. The Empire wasn't a monster. It was just lost, just like humans once were, and maybe someday if they met again, it wouldn't be as enemies. Years passed after that discovery. Humanity continued to grow, but with a new kind of wisdom. The Horizon facility became the center of learning for generations. The archipelago network still protected the planet, but it was now also used for communication with other worlds. Children studied both human and alien languages. People spoke of space not as a place of danger, but as a shared home waiting to be explored. And deep in museums, behind glass, the recording of that first smirk still played. Visitors watched it with quiet admiration. Some smiled back, others cried. Everyone understood what it meant. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just smiles. In one of the ElevenLabs, a young scientist worked late into the night. On her desk sat the last piece of alien alloy, the one that had sent the coordinates. It no longer glowed, but she believed it still had secrets. She touched its surface gently and whispered, "If you ever come back, we'll be ready this time. Not to fight, but to talk." The alloy stayed quiet, but for a second a faint light flickered on its surface, almost like a reply. She smiled softly, the same kind of smile that once stopped an empire. And far beyond the stars, where no human eye could see, something stirred, a small ripple in the darkness, like a whisper in the wind. Maybe it was the empire, maybe it was something new, but whatever it was, the humans wouldn't face it with fear. They had learned too much, grown too far, and come too close together to ever bow again. They would face it the same way they always had, with calm eyes, steady hearts, and that same quiet smirk that had once changed the universe. Because sometimes, all it takes to remind the cosmos who you are is to smile back. Years had passed since the great ships disappeared into the dark sky. The memory of that day had softened, but it was never forgotten. It had become part of who people were, like a heartbeat that never stopped even when silent. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Cities now glowed with clean energy drawn from systems inspired by the alien fragments. Pollution had almost vanished. Machines were smarter, faster, but never given control over humans again. People had learned that no matter how advanced a system becomes, it is the human spirit that decides its direction. Children grew up hearing stories of the smirk, the smile that had faced an empire. But to them, it wasn't just a story of defense anymore. It had become a story of discovery, of courage, and of how small hearts could stand against endless stars. They dreamed of seeing space not through a telescope, but through a ship's window. And soon, that dream started to come true. The Horizon facility had grown into something larger, an entire city built for space research. Above it floated giant glass platforms where ships took off daily. Humanity now had a small fleet of explorers, each carrying the mark of the smirk, a symbol of calm confidence. The fleet wasn't for war. It was for learning, for reaching out. One of the ships, named Aurora, was preparing for the farthest journey yet, beyond the known systems, into the black where no signal had ever come back. Some thought it was dangerous, others called it destiny. On the morning of its launch, crowds filled the viewing fields. People brought flags, flowers, and handwritten messages. Every screen in every home showed the same moment, Aurora standing tall under the sunlight, ready to rise. When the countdown began, there was no fear this time. Only pride, and the same calmness that had once made an empire retreat. As the engines glowed, people whispered softly, not prayers, but promises. Promises to stay kind, to stay brave, and to never forget what it means to be human. And then Aurora lifted off, slow and graceful, cutting through the clouds. The world cheered, but in the cheers there was something deeper, the sound of humanity stepping into its next chapter. Days turned to weeks, weeks into months. Aurora sent back images of new stars, frozen worlds, and strange glowing patterns in deep space. Every photo was a reminder that the universe was far bigger and far more beautiful than anyone had ever known. The team on Earth studied each discovery carefully. But one transmission changed everything. It came late at night. The signal was faint, filled with static. At first, no one could understand it. But then through the noise, a voice was heard. Not human, but calm and clear. We remember the smile. The room went silent. The words were spoken in an alien tone, but they were unmistakably peaceful. The voice continued, "You are not forgotten. You have awakened what was lost. We wish to speak." The message repeated 3 times, then vanished. For hours, no one said a word. Some were in shock, some in awe. The Empire, or what remained of it, had spoken, but it wasn't a threat. It was a greeting. The next few months became a turning point in history. Humanity worked carefully to reply. Every government, scientist, and leader agreed on one thing. This time, there would be no fear, no secrets, no hidden motives. They wrote a single, simple message, translated into dozens of symbols from the old alien carvings. We are listening. We come in peace. The signal was sent out through all frequencies carried by the archipelago network, which had once hidden Earth but now would connect it. Then, the world waited. Days passed. Then weeks, no reply. People started to wonder if the message had reached anyone at all, but in their hearts they knew. Even if no answer came, it was worth trying, because this time humanity wasn't reacting. It was reaching out. Then one quiet evening, the sky changed again, not with thunder, not with light, but with color. Waves of soft blue and silver spread across the horizon, like the northern lights, but larger, stretching from one end of the planet to the other. Every radio, every signal, every digital screen flickered at once. Then, the voice returned. We see you. You are not what we feared. You have learned to stand without hate. The message came with an image, not of a fleet, but of a world, vast and glowing, filled with oceans and mountains. A new planet. A message of peace. The aliens were not returning as conquerors. They were inviting humans to meet them, not for battle, but for understanding. It was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries. The world came alive with hope. People cried, laughed, hugged strangers. There was a feeling that went beyond word, a kind of joy mixed with disbelief. For once, the entire human race had done something together, not out of fear, but out of courage. And so, the journey began again. New ships were built, stronger and faster, not for escape, but for connection. Aurora became the first human ship to travel toward the alien world shown in the message. It carried not soldiers, but scientists, artists, and thinkers. People who represented not power, but curiosity. And as Aurora moved through the deep dark, its engines humming softly, the crew looked out at the endless stars and smiled. They didn't know what they would find, but that didn't matter. The unknown no longer scared them. It called to them. Back on Earth, people watched the journey in real time. The images streamed across every city, every home, the shining ship, the glowing stars, the calm faces of the crew. Children asked their parents, "Do you think they'll find friends out there?" And the parents smiled softly, replying, "They already have. They just haven't met them yet." That answer spread through the world like a song. When Aurora finally reached the alien world, something incredible happened. There was no army, no barriers, no weapons, only lights, soft floating lights that surrounded the ship like fireflies. Then out of those lights, shapes appeared. Tall, elegant beings, not threatening, but graceful. They didn't speak with words, but through emotion, waves of warmth that filled the air. And for the first time, humans and the beings of the Empire stood face to face, not as enemies, but as travelers on the same path. One of the beings stepped closer and projected an image, the smirk. That same small human smile that had once defied them. Then, it smiled back. The universe had just shared its first mutual laugh. The contact changed everything. Trade didn't happen right away. Nor did deep friendship. It was slower, gentler, like learning to trust again. The Empire, once vast and proud, had scattered across galaxies. Many of its worlds had been silent for ages. But through Earth's courage, through one act of quiet defiance, hope had been reignited across the stars. Worlds that had been under strict control started to rise again, inspired by the story of the humans, the small planet that had stood tall and smiled. They called it the dawn of understanding. Back home, life went on. The smirk symbol remained carved into the stone of city walls, not as a mark of victory, but as a reminder. A reminder that power doesn't always mean strength, and fear doesn't always win. In classrooms, children were taught not just about science and space, but about kindness, why the force that had changed history more than any weapon ever could. When people spoke of heroes, they didn't mention generals or scientists. They spoke of ordinary humans, the ones who didn't give up, the ones who smiled when the sky turned silver. And deep inside the museums of Earth, the recording of that first smirk still played. Visitors watched it, silent and wide-eyed, feeling the quiet courage that had saved the world. A plaque below it read, "They came with an empire." We answered with a smile. Decades later, when the children of that generation grew up and traveled to the stars themselves, they carried that same message wherever they went. No matter how far they went or what new worlds they found, they introduced themselves the same way. We are from Earth. We are the ones who smiled. And across galaxies, those words became known not as a threat, not as a warning, but as a greeting. The empire had fallen, but something greater had risen in its place. Understanding. The humans hadn't conquered the stars. They had simply reminded them what it meant to feel alive. Far away, in the silence of space, an old transmission still traveled endlessly through the dark. A faint video of a calm human looking into a camera, then smiling before the screen faded to black. That smile would reach new worlds long after humanity was gone. And when it did, someone somewhere would watch it and whisper, "They faced the impossible." And they smiled, because that was who humans were, not conquerors, not victims, just beings who dared to hope, even when the universe seemed too big, too cold, too far away. And in that hope, in that small, defiant smirk, they found the power to change the stars forever.